Wall Street remains shut for the 4th of July Independence Day holiday, but futures trade a tad lower this morning. Stocks in the Asia Pacific too largely lower, while the gift Nifty is indicating a higher start for the Indian market. Oil surges over 2% as markets face supply cuts by Saudi Arabia and Russia against prospects of weaker global economic growth. The supply cuts are likely to take out 1.5 million barrels a day from the global oil market. Brent trades around $76 a barrel. LTIMindtree makes its way into Nifty 50 as a replacement for HDFC. The National Stock Exchange has excluded HDFC from the benchmark on account of its merger with HDFC Bank. The changes will be effective from the 13th of July. CNBC TV18 Newsbreak is confirmed Suzlon Energy's board will meet on the 7th of July to consider a fundraise. Samvardhan Motherson announces the acquisition of 81% stake in a Honda subsidiary, while Bandhan Bank's CFO has resigned from his post. Good morning. You're tuned into Power Breakfast here on CNBC TV18. I'm Sonal Bhutra, coming to you live from the Mumbai News Center. Well, those were the top headlines that we are tracking on Wednesday morning. We don't have any cues coming in from the US markets. They were shut on account of Independence Day holiday. But let's take a look at what the Asian markets are doing currently. They are largely lower, so to say, except for the Taiwanese index. Actually, even that turned into the red in just last couple of minutes. So it's largely red as far as the Asian markets are concerned as well. Taiwanese index absolutely flat, but with some negative bias. We have Hang Seng sitting with cuts of around 0.8%. Nikkei is down 0.4%. So is Straits Times, which is down 0.4%. Kospi and Shanghai also seeing cuts of 0.4%. So it is a red-looking screen on the Asian markets. But if we look at the gift Nifty, that will come up for you on the screen. And that one is indicating a start which could be flat or slightly positive for our own markets at that 19,508 mark. Meanwhile, Wall Street futures are trading a tad lower this morning. Remember, the US market was shut on Tuesday for the 4th of July holiday. Investors will now look ahead to the Fed's June meeting minutes expected later today. Let's now get you the final update on our global market wrap this morning. European markets ended Tuesday's trading session lower, with the French CAC down 16 points, the German DAX slipping 41 points, and the British FTSE closing about 7 points lower. The Pan-European Stocks 600 traded within a range and closed just above the flat line, largely led by real estate and healthcare stocks. The incoming rate setter of the Bank of England, Megan Green, warned central banks not to take comfort in the notion that inflation and rates will automatically return to levels seen before the pandemic struck. Okay, all right, that's all about the global market action. We don't have any cues from the US markets, of course, but how will these cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in to tell you just that. What is the trade setup looking like, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Hey guys, a very good morning to all of you. Ekta, let me come across to you first up. What is the market setup looking like today?
Morning, Sonal. Well, yes, the US markets were closed. We don't have much cues coming in from the global space. But just to give you a sense in terms of the momentum for the markets did manage to hit record highs for the 4th consecutive day yesterday. FIIs were net buyers to the tune of over 2,000 odd crores. DIIs net sold close to around 786 odd crores. So that trend of FIIs buying and committing has continued for the past couple of trading sessions. Now, in terms of the global markets, yes, the US markets are closed on account of Independence Day, but Asia is largely lower this morning due to the services activity coming out of China as well as Japan, indicating a slower amount of activity, expansion mode, but has slowed down for both of these countries. Brent crude at around $75 per barrel, the gift Nifty indicating a little bit of a higher start. Now, in terms of a couple of cues to watch out for, the mid caps underperforming and the financials outperforming, because that's the trend that we saw yesterday. So the mid cap index slipped 72 points in yesterday's trading session. It snapped a 5-day gaining streak. Financials have been aided by a lot of positive Q1 updates which have come through. So the Nifty Bank gained around 143 odd points. Case in point is Bajaj Finance, PNB, IndusInd Bank. All of them were at fresh 52-week highs or gained on account of their Q1 updates. Now, in terms of Qs, we have the services as well as the composite PMI for the month of June. A lot of the Q1 business updates coming through for most companies. This week, we do have the FOMC minutes as well as the non-farm payrolls data. Next week, we have the US CPI data. And at the end of July, we have the Fed meet. So the FOMC minutes of the previous meeting will give us a sense in terms of what we can expect in the end of July from the Fed. So these are the overall cues at this point in time. Stock-specific action will continue for our markets.
Okay, all right. So that is the market setup. Thank you, Ekta, for that. Let me go across to Surbhi. Surbhi, a lot of stocks on your radar today.
That's right. So a lot of Q1 business coming in. First one is RBL Bank. The total deposits were up 8% sequentially and the CASA was up 12% sequentially. Next is Bandhan Bank. The loans and advances were down nearly 6% sequentially and the CASA deposits were down 8%. Additionally, Sunil Ramdani has resigned as the CFO with effect from October 1st. AU Small Finance Bank, there the total deposits were up 27% on a year-on-year basis and the gross advances were up 29%. Macrotech developers also came up with their Q1 update. Their pre-sales were up 17% on a year-on-year basis and the collections were down 8% on a year-on-year basis. Apart from that, Samvardhan Motherson will be important to watch out for as the company acquires 81% stake in Yachiyo's four-wheeler business. And lastly, Lupin, the company has received tentative approval from US FDA for a HIV drug.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Surbhi. So those are the stocks which are on our radar today. Finally, Mangalam is joining in with all the cues from the F&O space. Hey, Mangalam.
Good morning. So yesterday was a good day of trade. However, we were talking about some resistance on the Nifty near 17,450 and 19,450 and 19,434 was the high on the Nifty itself yesterday. But the second half in particular was led higher by the Nifty Financial Services. In turn, Nifty Bank also rose on account of that. The Financial Services Index led higher by both Bajaj Finance and Bajaj Finserv. Bajaj Finance and Finserv saw delivery buying of nearly 1,700 crores in the cash market, and that's what reflected in the institutional volumes as well. The FIIs bought about 2,134 crores in the cash market. The DIs sold about 800 odd crores as well. What's not stopping is the FII buying in index futures as well. Almost 1,200 crore rupees worth contracts bought yesterday, and most of them were on the long side. Nearly 14,000 long contracts added for about 1,500 short contracts that the FII has added. As a result of which, the FII long exposure, which was 70% yesterday, 66% at the start of the series, now is at 72%. One wonders, if the FIIs are so long, who's on the short side? Well, it is clients, basically HNIs and non-institutional clients, who at the start of the series were 55% short and now are 57% short. In terms of options, yesterday the Nifty stayed above that 19,300 mark for a long time, and we saw those 19,300 call writers cover their positions. We also saw writing at 19,400 call for a premium of 50 rupees, coinciding with yesterday's high. So resistance above 19,450 to 19,500 continues. However, the put writers have increased their levels. So 19,400 put saw a fair amount of writing, and as did the 19,350 put. So as a result of which, the support on the Nifty has moved higher from 19,150 to around 19,300 to 19,350, and the congestion zone still remains at 19,450 to 19,500. Another data point that stood out yesterday was the selling in stock futures. The FI sold around 1,250 crores in stock futures. A lot of that was short build-up, heavy short build-up in Eicher Motors and long unwinding in IDFC First Bank.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us and prepping us up for this trading day ahead. With that, we'll slip into a break. When we return, a whole host of stocks from the banking space, along with Samvardhana Motherson, are expected to be in focus today. We'll tell you in detail what's happening there. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. A number of stocks from the financial space, they'll be in focus today on the back of first quarter business updates being released by the companies. Abhishek is here with the lowdown.
Well, to begin with, IndusInd Bank loan growth is strong, but CASA ratio is at 6-year low. So deposit momentum was at 14.6% growth YOY and about 3.25% sequentially. The CASA ratio is at 24-quarter low of 39.9%, and perhaps for the first time in last 6 years that you are seeing CASA ratio below 40% in a quarter. Loan growth pretty healthy over there, both YOY and quarter-on-quarter. AU Small Finance Bank, the deposit growth is weak, loan growth is strong. So deposits are up 26.9% YOY, but almost flat on a sequential basis. Advances growth pretty robust at 29% YOY and about 7.5% sequentially. CD ratio has improved, so has cost of funds increased on a sequential basis. CASA ratio has dipped sharply to 35% versus 38.8% in the previous quarter. RBL Bank, the deposit growth is weak. It's up only 8.1% YOY and about 0.9% sequentially. Loan growth remains healthy at 20.4% YOY and about 4% on a sequential basis. So CD ratio has improved, which could actually help in mitigating the risk on net interest margin. CASA ratio remains stable at about 37.3% versus 37.4% on a sequential basis. Now for Bandhan Bank, the net interest margin could be under massive pressure given the fact that deposits are up 16.6% YOY and about 0.4% sequentially. However, CASA ratio has declined to 36% versus 39.3% on a sequential basis, and the loan book is massively down by 5.5% sequentially. CD ratio has declined as well, and there is a resignation of the CFO which could weigh on the stock price today. Back to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that. So those are some stocks that will be in focus from the financial space. But the other stock on our radar will be Samvardhan Motherson after it announced that it will pick up 81% stake in Honda Arm to acquire its four-wheeler business. Reema, tell us more.
So Samvardhan Motherson Sumi, which is called SAMIL now, has announced that it will be acquiring an 81% stake in Honda's subsidiary called Yachiyo. Yachiyo is listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. It currently has a two-wheeler business and it has a four-wheeler business. But Motherson Sumi will only be acquiring the four-wheeler business. Honda will acquire the balance, the two-wheeler business. So that's the news. Motherson Sumi will be acquiring 81% stake in Honda's subsidiary Yachiyo, and it will take on its four-wheeler business. The balance 19% stake will be held on by Honda. Now, let me tell you quickly a few things about this. One, the acquisition appears to be reasonable. The company is going to be paying an equity of 145 million euros. The revenues of the acquired company is 824 million. So the acquisition price appears to be fairly reasonable. Secondly, this acquisition also opens up new opportunities for Samvardhan Motherson because Yachiyo's key products are sunroofs, fuel tanks and exterior plastic parts like bumpers. But Samvardhan currently does not have a presence in sunroofs or fuel roofs. In fact, Yachiyo is a pretty big global player in sunroof with a global market share of close to about 9%. So one, it opens up new business opportunities. It marks their entry into the sunroof markets. And with this, the company will have presence in sunroof. This is the pro forma that the company had given. Earlier, they had no contribution from sunroof and fuel tanks. With this acquisition, about 3% of their annual revenues could come in from these two segments. Separately, because with this acquisition, since Yachiyo is owned by Honda, the company also has higher cross-selling opportunities with Honda, which globally is a very large player. So Motherson's wiring, etc., can be sold to Honda. Back to you.
Okay, all right, Reema, thank you so much for making sense of this news update. In fact, we'll be joined by the management of Samvardhan Motherson at 9:50 a.m. today. So do stay tuned in for that conversation. Okay, time for another break now. When we return, the Biden administration is preparing to restrict Chinese companies' access to US cloud computing services. More details on the other side. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Let's get you some important global updates now. The Wall Street Journal reported that the US is preparing to curtail Chinese companies' access to cloud computing services. Remember, this comes after China curbed exports of two metals key to the manufacturing of semiconductors. CNBC's Sam Badass gets us up to speed with all the details.
So this is being seen as the latest tit for tat, and I suppose it was only a matter of time because there have been concerns in recent months that China, perhaps some of these companies are trying to evade these export controls which came in the back end of last year by going through cloud computing services, and that is really what the aim of the game here, it seems, from this Wall Street Journal report, is to sort of plug that loophole right now. So the US looking to restrict Chinese companies from being able to access cloud computing. As I said, what this will mean, according to this report, is that the likes of Amazon and Microsoft will need to get permission before actually providing these services to these Chinese companies. And as I said, this is to plug a hole, they say, as Chinese companies are perhaps looking to get this cloud computing services in order to get around, somehow circumvent these export controls by actually being able to access these AI chips which are used in this cloud computing. So this is something that has been talked about for a while, so it's going to be very interesting to see how this is enforced and what the implications could be for some of these companies. But as I mentioned, this is being seen as the latest retaliation in this sort of tit-to-tat spat that we're seeing in the technology space off the back of the germanium and gallium export controls we heard about yesterday. We have seen a number of reactions, certainly to those export controls coming from China. Companies now racing, we're hearing, to secure supplies of the materials because, of course, this kicks in on August the 1st, so they only have less than 4 weeks to try to get these orders in now to get ahead, of course, of those rules. So it's a race against the clock now. A US chip wafer manufacturer said its Chinese manufacturer right now is looking for export permits to keep sending their products overseas because, of course, this is what it will mean now, is that they'll have to get permission to do this. A China-based germanium producer also said that buyer inquiries have been coming in now since the prices have been going up. They say export prices up 7%. They said customers in Europe, Japan and the US are hoping to actually build stockpiles now. So there was an expectation, certainly, that that would happen. And we're also seeing the Commerce Ministry will reportedly meet with major producers tomorrow to talk about the impact.
Okay, all right. That's what's happening in the global markets. But let's get you up to speed with the latest on the political turmoil in Maharashtra. After Ajit Pawar joined hands with Shiv Sena BJP coalition over the weekend, opposing factions of the NCP are set to hold separate meetings in Mumbai today in a show of strength. The meetings are expected to bring clarity on how many members of the legislative party would be in each camp. Currently, the NCP has 53 members in the 288-member Maharashtra Assembly. Of this, Ajit Pawar has claimed the support of at least 40 legislators. Moving on, top lawyers Harish Salve and Mukul Rohatgi have urged the Supreme Court to curtail the powers of Enforcement Directorate. They said, and I quote, "No one is safe in the country if the ED is not reined in," end of quote. The two lawyers were arguing against the arrest of their client Basant and Pankaj Bansal, the promoters of Gurugram-based realty group M3M Developers. Ashmit Kumar joins us with more details on this. Ashmit, strong statements made against the ED.
Indeed, some very strong comments being made with respect to the role that the Supreme Court needs to play in terms of, quote-unquote, reining in the powers of the ED. Now, just for context, the case at hand is that of the ED investigation into M3M directors and promoters, the Bansals, and the ED is essentially probing charges of bribery, bribes being paid allegedly by these persons to a special CBI judge. Now, as a part of that investigation, they were arrested on June 14th, and subsequently we've seen a whole host of proceedings. The Bansals moved the Delhi High Court, did not get any relief, and then finally this case came up before the Apex Court, where Harish Salve, flanked by the former Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi, made some very pointed suggestions. Number one, they argued that if these powers are not reined in of the ED, powers of arrest, if not reined in, then no one in the country will be safe. They went on to argue, to justify their stance by saying that in this case, the persons in question, the accused persons, Bansals, had been cooperating, that it is not the ED's case that they were not cooperating. Yet, despite that, the ED decided to go ahead, and that it does decided to go ahead and arrest the persons in question. Not only that, Hari Salve further argued that not only were they cooperating, they were also protective orders in their favor from the Punjab and Haryana High Court, and that this action by the ED is almost as if it is in circumvention of that Punjab and Haryana High Court, and that, importantly, that there is no argument made by the ED that there were any violation of the terms of that protective order. So the proceedings ended with essentially the counsels for the affected parties, the Bansals in this case, pointing out that they will now be moving the jurisdictional court of Punjab and Haryana High Court for seeking relief. But it does raise the larger question of the powers of the ED. And I say that because in the month of July of last year, in 2022, is when the Apex Court had granted its approval to sweeping powers that the ED has for arrest, search, seizure, for attachment of assets. But importantly, just the very next month, in August of 2022, the Supreme Court decided to hit a pause and said, look, that there is perhaps a room for revisiting this judgment, relooking at the powers available to the ED, and that review continues to be pending before the top court. So important question that the Apex Court now needs to perhaps look at.
Ashman, thank you so much for joining us with those details and telling us what's happening in the legal space. But with that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. Stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.